Welcome to Whole Team Eats podcast, a 24/8 media production. Ever wonder who trains your favorite athlete? Join Tim Miller as he takes a look at the behind-the-scenes training of professional and collegiate athletes. Tim connects with trainers, athletes, and others in the sports community to share their stories. This podcast is dedicated to highlighting the work of athletes and trainers to inspire action and build community.
Yeah. Last night I was at Wells Fargo Center in Philly for the St. Peter's versus Purdue game. The place was going wild, like the entire game. It's really cool because, both of us have been to a lot of different sporting events. And, I've been to 2 NFC championships for the Eagles. I've been to Sixers playoff games, Philly playoff games, Flyer playoff games. And the college, we were in college at one point. They had like the student section for both teams. And it was just a different environment. Every single point that either team scored, the entire section gets on their feet and stands and cheers. And it was kind of a disadvantage for Purdue last night because St. Peter's, being from Jersey City and only traveling down to Philly, like 90% of the arena was St. Peter's fans. So I walked into this game, lucky enough to just get offered a free ticket, but walked into this game thinking, it'd be cool if I saw a close game for both the St. Peter's versus Purdue and then UNC UCLA. And little did I know, by like halftime of the St. Peter's game, me and my friend who invited me, we were like diehard, like all in for St. Peter's. And it was hard not to. Like the entire stadium was all St. Peter's. So, it was cool to get invited to a game, and I was like kind of back and forth if I should even go, and then end up witnessing history. A 15 seed for the first time will advance to the Elite Eight. So really, really cool. But I know you've probably been to some cool sporting events yourself, right?
Yeah, well,
you just went to a lacrosse game not too long ago. Probably not the same, but
Penn Georgetown, that was a fun one. But even just going back to the basketball real quick, being at LaSalle when they made it to the Sweet 16, like that was insane. But honestly, seeing the 15 seed upset, what was that, number 3 Purdue? I don't know. I think I probably would have been going a little more hype, especially if I was there like you were. So fun experience and definitely a memory. So I'm jealous that you were there. Meanwhile, I'm here in York. So. But,
it was so lucky to get invited to that game and then see that type of game. And it's funny. I was gonna bet on St. Peter's and just forgot to. The thing is, I'm like always the worst luck when it comes to betting, so they probably wouldn't have won if I bet on them. But anyway, I think that's a good transition to welcome everybody to our first episode of Whole Team Eats podcast. So we are 24/8 Media, and we're launching this podcast in hope to enlighten and help other folks understand what we're trying to create and build here at 24/8. So welcome to Whole Team Eats podcast for those few early listeners that we may have. We'll see where it goes. But I think the overview for what we want to accomplish on what we're calling the Founders Podcast. So my name's Tim Miller, and obviously my co-host here and co-founder, Peter Lijoi. I think what we want to do here today is just show people what we're trying to build, because we get a lot of questions, and Pete, you can speak to this as well. What is it you're doing? What's your end goal? How are you monetizing? How are you doing all these different things that come in with a startup of a business? And we might be doing things a little bit different, a little bit more unconventional, maybe even a little backwards type thinking. But I think that both of us are on the same page, and we're hoping to just kind of show the behind the scenes process of what we're trying to do here at 24/8. So with that being said, I'll kick it over to you, Pete, just to start and tell us, why you're so excited about this idea to start. And then maybe I'll go into how the background actually started almost 8-10 years ago at this point.
Yeah, so you and I have been friends since, freshman year of college now, back at LaSalle days. So it seemed like a natural fit when you reached out to me with the idea, saying that you wanted to start your own business. Me, I've always kind of been entrepreneurial, wanted to do my own thing. And I mean, this seemed like a really cool, different kind of idea. Obviously, I've had a sports background myself, very interested in fitness, so it was like a natural fit. But yeah, as Tim mentioned, it's just like you can't be wrong when you're creating something. We might be doing something a little unconventional, but that's something that I really like. So, just testing new things, meeting new people, going to new places, and like that all interests me. And so it's been a fun ride. These past 2 years we've really been creating this company. So that's a little bit about me and where I'm at. So
What is 2 years? We're like 5 days away from our 2 year mark. I think it's the 31st of March, right?
yeah,
Will
like
be exactly 2 years,
pretty
which is
much like
wild.
COVID, when COVID started,
Yeah.
and then now
Yeah, we
everything.
started in right in the middle of March of 2020, which is right in the middle of COVID. So, much like a lot of folks, we got that opportunity of not having to commute and having a little more flexibility in our daily schedule. And we decided, hey, this is a perfect opportunity just to test something on social media and see if it gains any traction. So, for those listeners who are wondering, so what is 24/8? And I know you just alluded to it, starting back in college and then coming to this idea in the fitness world and professional collegiate athlete world. I think it was maybe sophomore, junior year of college, Pete, that I started talking to you about this idea. And we were the two type of people who would just always talk about different business ideas, right? We're kind of, that's why we became such good friends from the start, was always just talking about different ideas and what if we did this or what if we did that. But the one thing that we always had was fitness and sports always interest both of us. And I thought, wouldn't that be like the coolest thing ever if we were able to put something into action in this industry? So for me, as both of us are, individuals who might want to look to put on weight in the gym or, try to follow different athletes and see what workouts they're doing. I know for me, that's something that interests me when it comes to following different athletes and what they're doing with their workout regimens. And I'm a huge Philadelphia sports fan. So my natural fit was to look at, hey, what are some of these running backs or linebackers or what kind of exercises? Not that I ever am going to be close to the level that they are, right? That's just fooling myself. But I said, if I can do some of their workouts and maybe it will help me put on weight and gain some muscle as every college kid wants to do, then, I'll be happy. So I started looking at ways to follow these athletes in about, 2014 maybe, right? And that's when some of these social media channels like Instagram was a little bit younger, and was TikTok. When did TikTok even become a thing, right?
I don't know.
Not
To
even,
a
I don't even
millennial, I
think
got
TikTok
into
was
TikTok
around
late.
then. Yeah, so we had this emergence of maybe Snapchat and Instagram and these different social media channels emerging. And what I found was when I was Googling what type of workouts can I find on the web, on like just looking at different athletes that I follow, it was very difficult to find those workouts. And then for me, I'm kind of disorganized when it comes to bookmarking stuff. And I would, every time I'm in the gym, have to type it in and find the same website and go back and find the same exact workout that I was doing or a different workout the next day. I found this process really complicated, and I wanted to find a way to streamline this. So fast forward maybe 5-6 years, and we start talking about this again. It was actually before COVID. We started talking about it. We started, we both lived in Philly, and you would come over to the apartment complex I lived in, and there was like study rooms, and me and you would sit down in the study rooms and think of, okay, what do we want to make this? Do we want to make it a product? Do we want to make it a platform for trainers? I lost you right there. It really wouldn't be a founder's podcast without the technical difficulty. First off, but we're meeting in these study rooms and trying to figure out what we wanted to create within the fitness industry, whether it was a product like build an app or create something. I think our first iteration of the idea was creating something for trainers, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's funny how we started that, and then we went to probably 5 or 6 different iterations of the idea, and now we've circled back to being trainer focused. And all of that came about after putting this idea into action. So to give some further clarity of who we are and what we're trying to build, through social media, primarily started on Instagram, we try to highlight the behind the scenes training of both professional and collegiate athletes, and trying to streamline that process and saying there's a million different trainers out there, a million different athletes, all different schools, all different types of sports. And the one thing that this industry needs is consolidation, or one centralized location where all this content can be found easily accessible for people like myself who want to follow the workout content, or people just from a pure social media perspective who want to follow some of their favorite athletes who are influencers in their own right. So some of these athletes have huge followings, fans, students at certain schools. They want to see what these athletes are doing in the time that they're not on the court or on the field or playing in their respective sport. And what we noticed early on, and Pete, I'll let you talk this about in a second, is what we noticed early on was there's a disproportionate amount of time that they spend training their bodies to stay at the peak of their game and peak of their respective sport. And we wanted to uncover, let's just say 95% of the time, or even more than that, probably 98 or 99% of the time is spent, training right, eating right, recovery, all those different aspects that don't get shared enough, and there's not enough light on those areas to where we think it's fair to some of these athletes. And then the one piece that's really missing that we want to hit on is that the trainers don't get nearly enough credit as they deserve. So as a sports fan, and both of us are huge sports fans, I couldn't tell you before we started this idea the name of one trainer of any of the athletes I followed. I think there's something fundamentally flawed with that concept that I can ask some of my buddies as well and say, have you heard of any of these trainers that train your favorite athlete? Now, there might be one like celebrity type trainer that they hear of, maybe Tom Brady's trainer that you hear of on ESPN, but very few and far in between get the recognition that they deserve. So what started as more of a product focused, as more of an athlete focused, although we are very focused on helping build the brands of athletes, what we really have transitioned to at this point is building the brands of trainers and helping build the brands of, different fitness brands that are emerging in this market. Athletes, obviously now with NIL, there's a lot of different opportunity there, and athletes want to try to get their brands built. The more that these brands are built for athletes and trainers, the more opportunity that presents to them, right? More people want to talk to them, more people want to sponsor them. And we think we just want to be along for the ride and help build these brands and create awareness in this industry. So,
Yeah, I mean, I think that, hitting on like the trainer aspect and consolidation is like a good segue into some of the successes and breakthroughs that we've seen. And also another part of our mission, right, besides building kind of like a media company now is what we call like the compounding network effect. And, you and I have both seen that what was initially a relatively new industry for us has become relatively small, reaching out to different trainers. And then somebody knows this guy who knows that guy or that woman, so it's kind of cool seeing who knows who and how. But I think on the flip side of that then is, consolidating all of that content and different workouts on the page has given the trainers that we've connected with a glimpse into like new training regimens, and even just being on some calls, hearing some of these guys say like, oh yeah, like I've referenced your page for a workout, or like when I need fresh ideas, I scroll through your page. Like that is really, that's a little win. Sure, it might not be monetizing or anything, but like that, we gotta soak that up while we have it. It's fun hearing that kind of stuff and realizing, while we get so in the thick of it, like posting all the time, hearing that people are using our page is like almost an educational resource. Like that's pretty cool, so
it's like validation in a way, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's fun. Little things like that. The ebbs and flows of running a business. There's a lot of ups, a lot of downs, but little things like that, make it all worth it and kind of like light a fire under your ass again to keep doing what we're doing.
Yeah, I think that's the one thing you learn really quickly is that you fail a lot more than you succeed, but it's finding the silver lining in some of those small victories. Like you said, having one of our followers or somebody who doesn't even follow us to say, hey, can you connect us to a trainer? That's like what we want to happen, right? Or, hey, thanks for the workout. Like I saw this on your page. Or having trainers who I've connected to over time and saying, you guys have helped me find different trainers and help me build out like my business model. That is powerful for us. They're saying we get value out of what you guys do on a daily basis. So what sometimes seems a little monotonous, repetitive, both of us have gone through the ebbs and flows of, man, I know I've been a little behind the last couple of days on putting up content. And it happens, right? Over a 2-year span, there's going to be ebbs and flows. It's going to happen. It's inevitable in a way. And those little messages to us kind of is what keep us going. We want to drive as much value as we can to not only our followers, but really what we're trying to build is a community of trainers. And the more value we can show to our community of trainers that we're building, or our trainer network, whatever you want to call it, it really keeps us going. So we appreciate any messages that we get. It definitely keeps us, going in the right direction. And sometimes it sparks a new idea when somebody says, recently we just had somebody reach out on a post asking, I think he was like an NFL barber, right? So he cut hair for like NFL guys. I think he was referencing, one of the guys we just put up recently, and they just got traded, and he was like, oh, do you know who his trainer is, who I can connect to? And I just sent him the trainer profile. He's like, thank you so much. I'm going to connect him, ask if he knows if I can get in touch with this athlete in any way. And I was like, Pete, did you ever think that we would be connecting a barber to one of our trainers? And you just don't know where this idea is going to take you at times. So it's really interesting, the different things that we see on a daily basis. I have to say, we've gotten a lot of love back from these trainers, right? Yeah. They really appreciate, at least it seems that way, that they appreciate what we do. Obviously, the more that we grow, the more value that we have at our disposal to our trainers. Like right now, we're trying to create a way to, partner with different smaller, I guess you could call it smaller brands in the fitness industry with maybe new products, or just a smaller brand with a product that's been around for a little while, and trying to say, if we were to help our trainers and make a mutually beneficial relationship between you and our trainer network, we could get your product out in the right hands and put that in front of the right audience, which is our following. And then for the trainers, it shows our value to them and saying, this is something I can incorporate in my training. And we know that every product we come across, we might reach out to 10 trainers. It's not right for all 10 trainers. It might be right for 3 of them.
Yeah.
Right?
I think to your point, right? Like reaching out to smaller brands or having them reach out to us, and then we facilitate, getting their product into the trainers, their target market. Going back to the name of this podcast, Whole Team Eats, like we really believe in just like getting every side of the market to grow in tandem. We want to see the trainers succeed. We want to see the brands succeed. And obviously, we as 24eight want to grow as well. So that looking out, we're in a business of people, and I think as adults we like overcomplicate things too much and miss out on that message. Like we're all people, right? So let's treat each other like that. Let's keep it cool. Just be normal and try and do good for everyone. And that's when you start to see people win. You get connected with other people, and it's been a fun ride and kind of preaching that message and like kind of making that a little bit of like the ethos in a way of 24eight, if you would agree, Tim. It's been fun, and we've got a lot of people on our side because of it. So
yeah, I think one of the main themes me and you have talked about at certain times when we start to get bogged down in some of the day-to-day, or there's all these different ideas. And we even have people we meet with and they say, oh, well, you should do this, or you should do that, or this is the best way to build this community, or best way to start monetizing. And we say, well, we appreciate all the insight that you may have, or we don't, whoever it may be who might have more experience than us. But I think that for us, it's simplifying, right? So when we simplify and say, here is a clear idea of where we want this thing to be, almost like starting with the end in mind, it helps us create small steps here today to try to just every single day build off the last day, the day prior. And I think that's really important when not trying to stray away from your end goal, your end target. And I know we've talked a lot about like, what is our purpose, right? What is our why? And that's something that's really important for a lot of startups is you can't lose sight of that why, like why you started, what your actual purpose as a company, as a startup is. And our why at a very basic level is to inspire action, right? So we want to inspire action, not only within the training community among trainers and athletes, but the people who follow them, right? So all the fans or the alumni of schools or the current students at schools, we want them to aspire because they're already following a lot of these athletes. We hope to also bring in the trainers as well and give them the credit that they deserve, which is not even close to where it should be. But trainers and athletes alike, helping connect that side of the market to the other side of the market, which is the fans that follow them and the people who work out and want to follow what they're doing behind the scenes away from their respective sports. It's easy to see them on the floor and judge them and say, oh, well, like think about, Joel Embiid is just one, right? And they think this guy needs to get in better shape. That's been the narrative in Philadelphia for the last 5 years. Come playoff time, he looks winded. He needs to get in better shape. But realistically, as fans, it's easy to say that about an athlete while they're on the court, but we don't know what they're doing behind the scenes. So I know that he's had injuries as a fan, and if you follow him, and you have to think there's a lot of different roadblocks that athletes face that we don't know about, right? We don't know what goes on in their life. We don't know exactly, and they don't tell us everything that every time they're injured, or there's just stuff that we don't know as fans that we create these judgments around, which right or wrong isn't always fair to the athlete. And what we try to do now is with 24/8 is try to bring this more to the general public and say, here's what they're doing on a daily basis to remain at the top of it. And there's always going to be athletes who, don't train as hard as others, but for the most part, people think, they should be training 24/7, or, they should never get winded or get tired, or they should always be doing this. And the fact of the matter is, they do put a ton of time. I know I've seen stuff on social media. You could probably say this as well. It says the day in the life of, like a defensive lineman at like a D1 school. And like the amount of food that they eat in a day is unreal. And that's just the eating side of things. Then they have to train. They also have to go to class. They have tutors. They have practice. They have study for both classes and for their respective sports. And it's crazy to me to think that people are quick to judge some of these athletes and their daily routines without even knowing it.
That's
right?
You probably just saw me like laughing a little bit. I always laugh at the comments that get going specifically on TikTok. Like people, little keyboard warriors back there coming at Myles Garrett for being flat-footed, yet he's lifting 650 pounds. It's just little things like that to keep us entertained. But yeah,
I think that's a great comment. The keyboard warriors. There's a lot of them in 2022, isn't there?
Yeah, everybody's a keyboard warrior these days. But yeah, and it's funny because on the flip side of that, you have people commenting like, "Oh, like that's lightweight." But going back to what you said, inspiring action. Like we aren't expecting anybody to go out and just throw up 650 pounds. We just want to like get you in the gym. I should probably take our own advice. stop running a little bit. But yeah, so that's my piece there. That just made me laugh a little bit.
Yeah. So I think going back into our day to day, right? And as business partners, as founders of 24/8, like obviously we've had to kind of work off of each other and use each other as motivation on a daily basis. But for me, when I was thinking about finding a partner, I was thinking, okay, here's what I think I'm good at. Here's the areas I think I need help in. And if I have to go out and find somebody who I don't know, okay, preferably I like to understand who I'm working with. And it kind of came about over time, just natural progression. And I was the type of person who would talk about business ideas with anybody who would listen. And you were a couple other friends, but you were one of the main ones who just kind of meshed. When we started talking about ideas, it would flow and we would enjoy those conversations. And I think some of what I lack, and maybe you might have more of like a technical know-how. I know the one thing is, on the creative side, right? So being super creative is one of your strong suits, and thinking about different ways to engage an audience or a different way to, reach out to a trainer. And I think that's really important to have another founder, another partner who can kind of make up for some of your deficiencies. And I know you probably think the same about, me, and that's why we're such a good business partner. But I'll leave that to you, right? How we work off each other and kind of where we hope to go in doing so.
Yeah, well, our similarities is like always looking at things like as opposed to being a roadblock, kind of seeing the opportunity in it. I think that's like something I like appreciate about both of us. And we probably butt heads here a little bit, is when I just want to like jump right into something and you're like methodical, level-headed, and I'm like, let's just fucking do it, So I think that's where we definitely balance each other out, and that's been like really, really helpful. But also just like the level-headedness is like, I can be a little fiery sometimes, but then
I think we both can, right?
yeah. But
that's good. You need
yeah,
that.
you need it. Be a little tenacious. But yeah, no, it's been fun working with like a best friend, but also like you said, finding somebody that you can work with on like a personal and like friend level. So yeah, it's been interesting though.
Yeah, I think that you brought up a great point in saying, I'm more methodical, maybe a little more trying to strategize or be a little slower moving on certain things, and you're just like the go-getter, like let's do this, let's do that, like we'll worry about X, Y, and Z later. We'll just figure it out on the fly. And what I came to understand, and probably what you've come to understand on the flip side, is it's good to have both sides of it. Mm-hmm. So I know we've run into people who, outside of athletes and trainers who have, we've connected to over time, who might be like a single founder. And I think both of our thought process after running into those types of people is, man, that must be so hard to not only stay committed to what you're doing, but it's so hard as a single founder to always be able to like find a new version of what you're doing or pivot at the right time. Sometimes you need the other business partner to give you that fresh perspective, or just be another voice in your ear and say, this might not be the best way to do it. Maybe we need to tweak it or pivot in another direction. Mm-hmm. And I think both of us have had those different instances where we say, hey, Pete or Tim, this is what we're doing, and I see opportunity in this realm or in this market. One of the things that we've spun off, so 24eight Media, right? 24eight Fitness is our main account on Instagram, TikTok, different social media channels. We've recently spun off one of our communities in the athlete world, which is Lacrosse Community. So I generally spend most of my time spearheading the main account, which is a culmination of all different types of sports, while you have now started working on creating that connection within the lacrosse community by itself. And I think that's pretty powerful. So tell us a little bit, and some of our followers, about how that's going with the lacrosse community in general, and why we decided to do that. Maybe like, is it like a closer knit community, and just give some understanding of why we made that pivot.
Yeah, well, I mean, going back to what I said earlier, being in a business of people and trying to like connect the dots between these different trainers and whatnot, having played lacrosse since fourth grade and, my mom being from Baltimore, always been like a part of my life. I know that the lacrosse community, it being like a smaller, more niche sport, is super tight knit, right? So it seemed like a natural progression into that if we wanted to kind of like essentially use the account as kind of like a guinea pig, uh, again, it fits my personality of wanting to just like jump in and figure things out, paving the road as I walk on it, as we we always say.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it seemed like a no-brainer to test out lacrosse. Again, taking the same blueprint that we laid for the main account, 24/8 Fitness, reaching out to trainers, connecting with them, seeing what their stories are, how can we add value, right? So it's really just kind of segmenting what we're already doing, but in a community that we know, or I know pretty well. And that's been a fun little journey too. And we've actually seen some blurring, right, of the main page and lacrosse page. Either a brand knowing a lacrosse trainer knowing, like a football trainer. It's been cool. And so like just seeing how it's all like the different communities are connected, even cross sport. I think that's been really fun. And actually, I had to tell my mom to be quiet. She's watching lacrosse right now so that we could film this in peace.
Runs in the family, right? It's just
Yeah,
like
she,
lacrosse family.
yeah, born and
Yeah, I
raised.
think it's really important to highlight all the different sports. Us as founders, we start with the sports that are kind of natural to us and that we follow the most. But like, there's a ton of potential in lacrosse and soccer and like MMA, which is really up and coming. These have like almost like cult followings, which if you're part of this community, you're like an avid fan. I know, like for me, like my girlfriend, her younger brother, he played lacrosse at Lehigh, and he'll sit out and watch games like all day, and he knows everything about. And as a huge sports fan, I know very little about some of these leagues, like the PLL and some of the other younger leagues. And on the women's side, what's the women's league that they started? Is it Athletes Unlimited, right?
Athletes Unlimited, yeah, they're making waves over there.
Yeah, Athletes Unlimited is really up and coming with the PLL. I think the PLL just struck a deal with ESPN for the
Huge, huge
yeah.
for the sport. Yeah,
It's obviously we can shout him out. Paul Rabel, right? Am I saying that right? Yeah, Paul Rabel. He's kind of the goat of that industry. But congrats to them, and hopefully we can take a page out of their book as we build what we hope is a media company and empowering the brands of athletes, trainers, and some of these smaller fitness brands, and kind of connecting everybody as a whole. So consolidation, finding one centralized location where we can foster this sense of community and really help build the brands. And obviously we get this question a lot, and you already hit on this earlier, but we always get asked, what is in it for 24/8? Like, what's in it for you guys? And we always say, well, the more that we help our trainers and our athletes and some of the other smaller fitness brands in this industry grow, inevitably we're going to grow as well. And as we grow, it just broadens our scope and broadens our ability to create value and help these different segments of the market. So most notably trainers, but I think that's super important. And you can kind of talk to how we got started, right? We didn't have a lot of resources. We didn't have a lot of connections. Neither of us played in college. So some people we see, like, how did they get started? And it was a professional athlete or as a collegiate athlete, and they kind of use their following, which is great. Like, they should absolutely. If one of us played, we would absolutely leverage any following or connections that we had. Not to knock them, but we had to commit from a different approach, and people who we meet with don't always see that. Is that where we started was a little bit different. I know we were both a little apprehensive to mention it to some of our friends from the start. Like, some of our friends, maybe like one or two, we each mentioned to. But we started with an Instagram page. We put up maybe 10 posts, and we had, 5-10 followers for the first month? Like, nobody. Literally nobody. And then we started just posting more regularly, and there was times after like a month or two, it's like, this is kind of fun. It's kind of getting old. Do we keep going with it? And what was our mark after 1 year? I think our 1 year mark for followers on Instagram was like 500 or
500. Like,
like
let's just call it
four,
500. Yeah.
yeah, 495 or something. It was like right at 500. And, we're 5 days away from our 2 year mark. So a year later, and we've gone from 500 to almost 6,200 on Instagram. And people say, okay, what did you do differently in year two? We really didn't do a lot differently, except for we started reaching out to trainers. We started reaching out to athletes. We started reaching out to brands. We spun off the lacrosse community to its own. And it was really just creating connection. That's like what we're all about, right? Is creating connection. And the power in creating connection and building relationships is evident in the size of our following. We hope to triple in the next year, right? We can set goals. It might not happen. Obviously TikTok is another platform we've started using, and the growth is really good on that. We're almost at 10,000 followers on TikTok. And that's just in less than a year, right?
Yeah. Well,
so go ahead.
No, so I'm thinking this is like a perfect segue to something that I harp on all the time is like learning. So, I'll just kind of go first here. So one of the things, and you've taught it to me the most, and this is why we need each other, is consistency, right? So like you said, year in, 500 followers, most people would have given up way before that, but you'd be on my ass all the time saying like, dude, get a post up, right? And you never know what post is going to take off, right? All it takes is one. So that time, like we didn't feel like doing it, look at, we reap the rewards just by staying consistent. So I think that's been like a huge, huge learning bit for me. And also kind of going back to, audience, right? So I think spinning off into lacrosse was a no-brainer, but also realizing that our audience was really like football and NBA focused. So you don't want to like muddy their feed with these athletes that they don't know, right? Then you start losing followers, and not even to get into numbers, but it's like pay attention to your audience, especially if you're going to be on social, because that's crucial. Knowing what they like, so that way, you're speaking your customer's language by way of video, right?
Yeah, I think you brought up a couple of great points there. Is being consistent. That is one thing that I harp on. You can attest to that. But you never know where that next, being consistent, it's one of those questions where you ask folks a lot, like, do you attribute success to hard work or luck? And, I listened to the podcast, How I Built This, right? And they interview all these different founders of all these different companies and how they started. I guess that's kind of what we're trying to do here with this podcast, is give a little background on a lot of the trainers who we've connected with in the industry, and to say, how did you get from where you were when you started to where you are today, and where do you hope to take it in the future? But going back to the podcast, How I Built This, it goes through their background, how they got started, how the idea came about. And it's funny. Almost every single founder says a little bit, or sorry, I should say.
Same thing, different way.
Yeah, they all say it in the same thing, but a little bit different. And what they do is they go in and I guess Guy Raz, the host, he asked them, do you attribute where you are today to hard work or luck? Most people will say what we always say is that you create your own luck, right, through hard work. So it's a mixture of the two. Some will say, oh, it's complete luck and whatever, or it's just hard work, right, and putting your head down and doing the constant grind of whatever you're trying to build and just staying consistent with it. But I think that's kind of true for us, and I don't know, I'll let you answer it in a second, but for me at least, we create our own luck through consistency. Consistency is the number one thing that I preach. And if we were to give up after 500 followers, we never would have seen what type of potential this has. I'm saying that not even 2 years in, we have no idea where this idea can take us and what this platform can do for, it's not for us really, it's for other people. And I think we're just, like you said over and over again, we're in the people business, and we genuinely enjoy connecting and building relationships with other people. But how would you answer that question when it comes to luck or hard work or a mixture of the two?
I mean, you said it, right? Consistency is where, like, if you're consistent, you never know what's going to stick. And that one thing that sticks, you can label as luck, right? But consistency builds longevity. So, some people might be like, damn, you're already 2 years in. When I look at it as like, we're only 2 years in. So that's what I mean. If you stay consistent, then you're playing the long game and looking for like that long-term value. So to anybody who says like 2 years and I haven't done a lot, just take a sec, reflect. Like, we've done a shit ton now that I'm thinking about it in these 2 years. We've met a ton of awesome people, whether it be brand, athlete, trainer. We never knew these guys before, these women before. So yeah, I mean, consistency, but you got to do it. You just got to jump in.
Yeah, I think we got that comment. We got that comment recently, right? Like, you guys are 2 years in. Like, what are you? What's your end goal? How are you monetizing? All these different questions, and we're like, it's refreshing to hear it, because as you want to run an idea, it is good to get that question time and time again to just make us think. But at the same time, that person isn't us. They don't see the business how we see it. They don't have the same background as us. They don't know exactly what our future plans are. And even if we tell them what our future plans are, they might not agree with it. So it's, stick to what we find is the best path forward. Iterate, pivot when necessary, but don't just take everybody's idea, because if you take everybody's idea, most people told us after 1 year that we couldn't amount to anything, right? 500 followers, we weren't anything. And the one thing I've learned in just, reading different articles or books or listening to podcasts, or like I just mentioned, listen to How I Built This, the one thing that remains constant between all the founders is the amount of failure they have to endure. It's every failure is one step closer to that, whether it's a big success or even a little win, right? And just finding the silver lining in those small wins. But like, I listen to so many podcasts and they're talking about funding for their idea. And there's this one creator, I forget what the brand was, where they had to go to like 40 different banks just to get a loan. Imagine being turned down from 39 different banks only to have number 40 say yes. Like, how ecstatic you must be when you get that one yes. But the power and the drive and the will to keep going after being rejected 39 times. I just find something that hit me and said, when we came inside, I said, Pete, we're going to fail again and again and again. And the one thing we won't do is just give up, right? If we don't see potential in the idea any longer, then okay, let's pivot or change or do something else. But even when we had 500 followers, we saw the potential still. We got those, one athlete to repost us, and we got so much engagement on the page. We said, man, if we could get one more athlete or connect with one of these trainers, this thing could really take off. And that's exactly what we've kind of seen. So I'll let you kind of close and just saying, what you're excited about for where this idea is heading, right? Like what gets you up every day? And, we both have day jobs, so this isn't the main thing that we do. Hopefully, our goal, like one of our goals is to transition to make this our day job and do this all day, every day, and, build out a team and hire folks to come along and work with us on this movement that we're trying to build. But what are you most excited about in the upcoming 3 months ahead? Like not trying to project out like a year, but in the next 3 months, what are you most excited about?
I mean, dude, this gives me like a lot of autonomy outside of my day job to apply my creative, abilities. So obviously getting ready for the launch of this, there's going to be a lot of marketing involved, a lot of coordination, and a lot of creativity, right? So looking forward to that. But also just continuing to meet new people. I love meeting people. So continuing to meet trainers, brands, athletes, like that is so cool when we get to do that. And then lastly, just, building something that I'm truly like passionate about, right? Like getting to see the growth of this and being able to take a step back every month or so and just say like, where were we a month ago and where are we now? And being able to see that progress, like that alone keeps me going every day. So
Yeah, I think I get the question sometimes is, at what point do you ever stop? Right? And I think the way to answer that is what you just mentioned is once the passion for the idea is no longer there, then that's the time to call it quits, right? But for both of us, we're both super competitive, super passionate about this industry, right? Fitness and training and following athletes of different sports. And until something fundamentally changes with both of us or fundamentally changes with the industry itself, which I don't see what would change it obviously in the next couple of months, but I think that's what drives us to keep going every single day and every single week and every single month and just keep building on what we've just built, right? So now it's finding a way to incorporate this podcast and bring attention to the trainers in a way where they can tell their story. So I think what we were planning to do is we're planning to have on trainers of different sports. It might start with trainers more from, maybe NFL or college football or NBA or college basketball. Like that's where we started with our audience. So we are going to have some trainers and just in meeting with them, they have some great stories. Like they have some stories that I can't wait to share with any of our followers or listeners. But some of these guys have come from nothing or have come from completely different, career paths and have just done it out of goodwill to start, or they have a friend that needed help and they got started and then they kind of fell in love with the training side of things. So it's really interesting and really neat to hear all these different perspectives. And what I also think is cool and interesting for a lot of our listeners would be not one trainer or not every trainer is the same. Obviously, they have backgrounds in different types of training. So some are speed training with wide receivers. Some are strength training with offensive linemen. Some are, rehab and physical therapy. And, me and you aren't experts in the training community as far as the different backgrounds and, doctorates that some of these folks will have. But there's different trainers for every part of what the athlete may need, whether it's in season, off season, recovery, rehab. There's all these different areas of trainers with different backgrounds, and it's interesting for me and you to talk to some of these trainers and just get that different perspective on what they see on a daily basis and what type of athletes they deal with. So I'm looking forward to it. Can't wait to get this up and running. Whole Team Eats podcast. Hopefully, launching here fairly soon. But it was great to just kind of have this initial conversation and let people know what's going on.